Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to bring you yet another If You Like This, You Should Try That. This is going to be primarily horror books, maybe a couple of thriller books thrown in here, but essentially these are going to be talking about a book that is very well known and then pairing it with a hopefully lesser known book that I think is very similar in terms of plot, tone, etc. And I love making these videos because when I finish a book that I just think is amazing, I immediately think, I want to read a book that's like this. What else is similar? And then I go online and I start searching, and usually I come up pretty empty. So hopefully you enjoyed these as well. I've done many of these, not just for horror and thrillers, but also science fiction fantasy. So if I remember, I'll have a playlist listed in the cards and description box, so check that out. Otherwise, let's get started. First, let's talk about Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes, and this is a horror thriller book that is set in space. We follow a crew that is going off to investigate another ship that has been abandoned, and when they go in there, they find out that things are just not quite right. Things are just very strange. This book is definitely meant to be space horror. It's a book that very much has a feel similar to something like the Alien movies. However, I was let down by this one because while it was advertised to be space horror, I would argue that it's more of a space thriller, and I really didn't love the twist. So this is a book that I thought had a lot of potential, kind of missed the mark. I know other people enjoy it more, so if you're looking for something like that, whether you were disappointed by it or not, my recommendation is a little novella I love to recommend, and that is The Ghost Line by Andrew Neil Gray and J.S. Harbison. And this is about a crew of salvagers that go off to go and work in this luxury liner and go to find different parts. And when they're in there, the place appears to be possessed, and so within the story we follow them as they are slowly salvaging the ship. And then also there are these creepy things that are starting to happen. It's very atmospheric, it's very slow, it's also very character focused. There's a wonderful marriage relationship right at the center of the story, as the authors themselves are married and really bring that into this story. And I just really like this one. Again, it's quieter. I could technically call it horror, but again, it's more like creepy, it's suspenseful than like outright horrifying. But if you're looking for very similar setup and plot, this one delivered a lot more for me than Dead Silence did, so I would definitely recommend this as a follow-up. Next, for those of you that love Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, I want to cautiously recommend a comparison book. That book, as you know, is a very classic coming-of-age story following some young boys. There's a carnival coming into town, and creepy things begin to happen. And I do recognize that anytime you're trying to compare something to a classic, the comparison is going to pale in comparison, essentially. Nothing is going to be as perfect. But I did find that this book here, Black Mouth by Ronald Malfi, definitely had a similar feel and setup. And so again, I don't know if it's as perfect as that. I was a little bit let down by this one, but definitely it had a similar vibe. So this one follows a man who is returning back to his childhood home, and he is reconnecting with his brother who still lives there. And because of the story actually involves similar carnival and magician elements, I thought that it had similar themes in it, and again, very much a coming-of-age story, very heavy on the nostalgia. And so I really thought that this one, again, was similar. A lot of people have recommended this book as a comparison to It. While I see some vague comparisons there, again, a coming-of-age story, I personally think that it's much more similar to Ray Bradbury's tale, and that's the comparison I'm going to make here. Next up, I want to talk about one of my favorite novellas, that is Goddess of Filth by V. Castro, and this is a story that follows a group of young women who play around with a Ouija board. One of them possibly becomes possessed, and then we deal with the aftermath of the days that follow afterwards. They get involved with a priest and trying to exorcise them and so forth. And this is a book that I describe as being a fierce horror with a feminine lens, and so I was really pleased to find another book that had very similar themes. And so the book I want to recommend is Dance Among the Flames by Tori Elrich, and this is a book that is set in Brazil. It follows a young mother who is trying to rise above her status in the slums of Brazil, and in doing so she invokes the help of a goddess. And so this story is a bit fantastical in nature, but in a way you could say Goddess of Filth have those elements as well. It of course has these Latino or Latinx cultural roots that are grounded in the story. It's also very feminist. It has some sexual elements to the story. The author does not shy away from the fact that these are adult women and really is not afraid to go there. And I just saw, again, a lot of comparisons, and I just think that if you love Goddess of Filth, this is a great follow-up one that you'll likely really enjoy as well. Next, I want to talk about Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This book is historical horror that follows a young woman named Noemi who goes off to investigate what has happened to her cousin, who is sending home some rather concerning letters. She has been recently married off to a wealthy family and just does not seem to be well. So Noemi goes there, goes to the house, gets to meet the in-laws, and things are just very strange and disturbing. She starts to have some visions and just things are just not quite right. And I think you all know this book because it really blew up online. It was so popular, still is, and I think a lot of you are looking for something similar. So for those of you that love that book, I also want to recommend Hacienda. This is another historical horror book set in Mexico, but set further back. So this book takes place after the War of Independence. We follow a young woman who is engaged and has been married to a man, and you find out that this man has a history. He has a past wife, and the story is just very strange and unsettling. The woman moves into the estate and has to deal with the servants of the estate and so forth, and again, things are slowly unveiled. This is a book that is very slow burning, and honestly too slow burning for my taste. While I don't always love Gothic fiction, Mexican Gothic worked for me because it was very modern and it kind of took a twist on the Gothic setup and took it to a more, again, contemporary narrative. But this one, again, felt much more traditional and very slow paced. You can tell that it's also inspired by Rebecca, so if you enjoyed that book, you might enjoy this one as well. And you can probably guess that I'm also making comparisons due to the cultural elements. I love that Mexico is really in the forefront of the story, and you also get two stories that have very strong female characters at the center of them. So if you like Mexican Gothic, this is definitely one you may enjoy, especially if you prefer more slow stories that are very character driven, and yeah, more Gothic as well. And I also want to do a strange crossover recommendation. So I want to recommend a book for those of you that love Tiana Reeve Du's books like The Good House and The Between, but also are interested in things like The Haunted by Bentley Little. If you're not familiar, The Haunted is about a family that move into a house and, well, surprisingly, it possibly is haunted. And then I also want to do a cross-reference because I like that Tiana Reeve Du offers own voices stories for Black horror narrative. So if you want something that is weird and very sexually explicit like Bentley Little's work, because he tends to really push the envelope and make you very uncomfortable. If you're looking for something like that, but perhaps want this diverse element that actually, again, brings in an own voices experience from a Black perspective, then I have a crazy recommendation for you, and that is Nana by Brandon Massey. And this is one that I just feel like no one talks about online, and maybe because it is just kind of weird. And so this story follows a woman whose Nana or grandmother has recently died. So the story starts at the funeral, and in going to the funeral, they end up reconnecting with the woman's birth mother who basically gave her away, and so she was raised by her grandmother, but now she is reconnecting because the grandmother is gone, and she comes to live with the family and try to kind of take her place as a grandmother to the daughter's own children. However, within the story, you find out that this new mother figure, this new Nana, is very sexual. She starts hitting on the husband like right at the beginning of the story. And she's just a little bit too young for her age in the way that she presents herself. It's very strange, it's very uncomfortable, and I kind of loved it because of it. But I will say that for those same reasons, this book is not going to be for everyone, the same way that I often do caution people when they want to go check out Bentley Little's work. Because yeah, something about these authors, they love to show possession and supernatural elements in just a really weird way, and it's going to turn some people off. But if you like things like that with Bentley Little, again, if you're looking for Black voices stories, this is such a sleeper hit, and I really enjoyed it. It was a favorite of the year when I read it, and I just think it's a lot of fun. So I would definitely recommend Nana if you're looking for something a little more underhyped and are open to something a little bit weird. And I also want to talk about Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, and this of course is a more horror thriller that follows a woman who ends up getting a job at an apartment as a house sitter because she's down on her luck, and this job just seems seems too good to be true, so she decides to go ahead and do it. However, the residents there are just very strange and odd, and things just go really terribly wrong, as you would expect. And the book I want to compare it to is another horror thriller, and that is Just Like Mother, which follows a woman who, as a child, she was involved in a cult, and then as an adult, she has escaped but is reconnecting with a childhood friend that she knew from those days, and they reconnect together, and you get to find out that one of them has some fertility issues, and the story kind of involves that aspect there. Now, this is one I want to recommend because both books draw inspiration from Rosemary's Baby. So yes, I technically could have said if you liked Rosemary's Baby, you should read these books, but I feel like Rosemary's Baby, again, being a classic, it's kind of hard to compare it to a more modern work. But if you enjoy retellings like Lock Every Door, I think that you will also very likely enjoy Just Like Mother, because both of them take aspects of Rosemary's Baby, but they twist them. So it's fun to read these books after already loving the original story, because you're going to see those comparisons, but at the same time, both stories take the work in a different direction and make it their own. I do wish that the motherhood representation had been a little bit stronger in Just Like Mother. I had some quibbles when it comes to how certain stereotypes were reinforced, but as a retelling, it was a lot of fun. And as I mentioned, both these books are technically more horror thrillers, so they do tend to follow kind of more of a thriller narrative. But while Lock Every Door leans more on the thriller side, I will say that Just Like Mother definitely leans into the horror elements towards the end, and it was, yeah, definitely exciting. So if you enjoy books with twists and turns, some unexpected moments, and surprises, then I think that you will find this book a lot of fun and hopefully enjoy it as well. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to hear of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out? I'd love to hear what you think of my comparisons. If you disagree, that's okay too. If you have better comparisons, you can definitely drop them in the comments as well. And don't forget, if you want even more videos like this, I do have a playlist that should be linked somewhere in the cards or description. Otherwise, if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing if you enjoy it. I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy, and true crime. You can help me out by giving this video a thumbs up, dropping a comment, even if just a little emoji like a ghost. And if you want to help me out more, you can even hit that little notification bell. That way you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.